Hi everyone. Welcome back to TTT, the Talking Transport Transformation podcast. Brought to you by TUI, the Transformative Urban Mobility Initiative. While gender and mobility receive growing attention, research into transgender and mobility remains limited, especially from the non-Western perspective. For transgender people, access to urban leisure can be disrupted by issues of violence, discrimination, and harassment when using public transport. To discuss this topic, we are glad to have Shahin Shakibaei, a researcher at Istanbul Technical University, here with us. He's doing important research on the topic of transgender and gender-diverse individuals living within Istanbul, Turkey. Shahin will give us insight into his inspiration for this under-researched topic, the experiences from the communities that he interviewed, and recommendations to improve the comfort and safety of transgender and gender-diverse public transport users. So let's listen in.
Hi, welcome Shahin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So just getting into it, research into transgender and gender diverse mobilities and their access to leisure opportunities in urban environments remains limited. What exactly motivated you to get into this topic of research?
As a transport researcher, one of my major fields of interest is mobility justice and social inclusion, especially for socially disadvantaged and vulnerable people. I think it was May 2019. We were on metro getting back home from university, and there was a guy. I knew him. He was a student at the same school, university at Istanbul Technical University, and it was barely clear that he belongs to an LGBT association with his dressing style. And in a society like Istanbul, in Turkish context, it was clear that there was something strange with this one, with regard to the norms of the society. And a few minutes later, an old couple started to staring at this friend, and a few minutes later, they started to saying some bad words and humiliating this guy, only because of his identity. And I think it was 2 or 3 stations earlier when he decided to get off the metro. We also got off the metro since he was a friend of my friend. We were on the same metro. At that time, that night, I was thinking about the issue. Then I tried to look at the literature, the existing literature, and saw that it's really limited, especially in non-Western countries. And I decided, I can track this issue using this friend. And some days later, I again saw him at university and talked to him about the issue. And I told him I want to a little bit focus on this issue. And if you want, you can help me to reach more people like you. And fortunately, he accepted. And in this way, 1 month later, I officially started working on this issue. And for the first pilot interview, he arranged a meeting of seven people belonging to this gender diverse group. Then at that point, we were at a coffee in Istanbul for around 1 hour, and they were talking about their gender, their identity, their preferences, their orientation. And I saw that harassment, violence, especially verbal violence on public transport is a very commonplace experience of their normal and routine life. So it was the main object, the main motivator for me to work on this issue. And then, it was my first time to working on such issues. My PhD thesis was something totally different. It was related on optimization in railway operations, and it was really some strange field for me at that moment. And I tried to find some professors a little bit more familiar with the issue, and I tried some professors. I talked to some professors in Istanbul from universities, but they didn't accept because it's some kind of a taboo issue here in Istanbul and in Turkey and in many other countries too. So I started to looking abroad in foreign countries, and I sent email to some professors that I had read the papers. And in Australia, there was Professor Oscar Vorobyeva-Spinta, my co-author in my latest article. He accepted to supervise from that point, and we started to work on the issue. And for other, I think it was 9 months, I talked to almost 49 people, gender diverse people, transgender and gender diverse people. And after that, we started to analyze and write the paper.
I think it's very important research that you did conduct. And going off of that, the research examines the constraints of transgender and gender diverse people face while engaging in urban leisure. Could you give a bit of insight as to what urban leisure is?
Firstly, we didn't want to. I mean, there was not in our plan to make a connection with leisure, urban leisure. But when talking to 49 gender diverse people, we saw that the only and maybe the rare, beside the underground economy, the rare field of employment for these people is entertainment sector. I mean, working in nightclubs, discos, pubs, and places like that. And they are all somehow related to leisure in urban places. And almost half of the respondents were working or had an experience of working in entertainment sector, and most of the negative experiences on public transport was related to their commuting from home to their work, especially getting back home late at night. So the main objective here in connecting urban leisure to our study was that.
Going off of that question, what exactly are these restraints and where do you think they stem from?
We saw that in the how can I say, in societies like Turkey, such people, I mean, gender diverse people, transgender people are generally stigmatized because of their identity. And this is mainly caused by cultural, political, and religious beliefs of people. So we decided to, theoretically, we worked on stigma theory and leisure constraints. So, they had problems related to three categories, like structural problems they have, interpersonal and intrapersonal. The problems stemmed from these three main categories. Structurally, the laws in Turkey, in Istanbul, they generally don't, they are not in favor of people like these groups. For example, they don't have, their access is very limited to healthcare insurance, or they don't have access to tertiary schools and stuff like that. So structurally, they have problems. And interpersonal, when we look at interpersonally, in the culture, in our culture here in Turkey and in many other countries in Middle East, it's some kind of taboo. And culturally, really, and from the point of religion, it's somehow bad to belong to such an association. And it's it's somehow, how can I say, it's not belonging to the culture of this nation. And after some point, intrapersonally, I mean, these people, they start to accept that there is something strange with them, and they have to tolerate this on public spaces, on public transport, and while running around, while doing their normal life. So the main sources of this discrimination, I think, was related to these three categories.
Of these findings, are there any in particular that stood out?
You know, the last when we had our interviews with these people, the first 10 minutes was related. They could freely talk about their gender, their experiences, their life, and almost after 10 minutes, I was asking about their, for example, car ownership, their age, their education, and stuff like that. And during the last 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, they were talking about their positive or negative experiences on public transport. And we saw that the major causes of harassment and violence on public transport is related to other three categories. One, from passerbys. While they are using public transport, they were getting harassed by passerbys. The other was by the passengers on the bus, on metro, and like that. And the last one was from the staff, the driver, security staff, and like that. But the most important ones was from passengers, and they were recommending some points. For example, they had 5 recommendations, and they were mainly wanting to focusing on driver training and education, because they had experienced many times that, for example, some other passengers on the bus or on the metro were humiliating them or saying bad words to them, but the driver didn't know what to do, and how can he or she intervene and control the situation. And they told me that I think they are not seen, they are not observed in the society, and they can be more visible through proactive educational and messaging on paper, on printed, and digital, on the bus, on the metro, and stuff like that. Then they recommended use of smartphone applications and internet-based applications to report harassment, especially, there are some districts in Istanbul that are famous for their conservative and religious aspects, especially in places like that. They told me that it would be very beneficial to have some smartphone applications to report their cases if they face any problem. Then they talked about cultural shift. It's a matter of culture, because we have to respect all. And they told me that this is an issue of culture that can be gradually get better by education. And also they told about increasing security measures. When I was studying literature on the same issue, there was a similar study in Oregon, United States, and most participants there, they had said that the police or security staff is the major source of problem in America. But here, just in opposite, we saw that security staff and police and patrolling around the stations on bus, minibus, on BR, bus rapid transitions like that, they thought that it would be better to have more of this kind of controls. And yes, these were the points stood out.
Interesting. Maybe as a final last question, If and to what extent do you think these findings are specific to Istanbul?
Istanbul is a mega city of developing world, and I think in most cases is not only is true for Istanbul and in many other cities, because there are not so many articles and papers in the literature, but when surfing online, I saw that almost in all parts of the world, gender diverse and transgender people face the same and similar negative experiences. So I think mostly the problems can be expanded to the other megacities in the world. And I saw that Istanbul is the biggest city in Turkey, and one of the biggest in the world too. And I think it was 35 out of 49 participants, they were from other small cities in Turkey. And also we had 3 foreigner participants from other countries like Russia, Ukraine, and Iran, neighbor countries. And we saw that most participants were from the smaller cities in Turkey or other countries. And most of them told me that they cannot live in their own cities because they are known by everyone in the city. Everyone know them, and there would be more problematic for them to live in their own cities. And they moved to Istanbul and cities like Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, which are far greater than their own hometowns. And I think, the issue is not only for Istanbul and the other megacities and other cities, especially in non-Western countries in Middle East. The issue is the same everywhere.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your research to come and speak with us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Talk soon.
Thank you, Shahin, for giving us an inside look at transgender and gender diverse communities in Istanbul. We now have a better understanding about the challenging situation as well as measures to be taken to improve comfort and safety of all public transport users. For gender minorities, measures such as driver training and improved educational messaging in public spaces could significantly improve the status quo. We enjoyed learning about this topic with you. As always, thanks for tuning in, and hear you next time.